Picture, if you will, and think about the most wealthy person that you know, personally. The big boats, the nice lake place, the Mercedes in the driveway, all of that stuff that we all try to accumulate and strive for. Now, when you've got that person in mind, picture a complete stranger coming up to them and saying, "Follow me. Leave this stuff. Come with me. You don't need this. Follow me." How do you think that person would respond? Well, at the very least, it would be a 911 call, wouldn't it? There's somebody that needs to go to the hospital for an emergency 24-hour hold. But that's not what happened when Jesus was walking along and he found a man named Matthew, who was also quite wealthy, had a lot of material stuff. Didn't have any friends, but he had a lot of material stuff. Didn't have any friends because Matthew was a tax collector. And he was wealthy because he padded the tax bill and pocketed the difference. He gave the Romans their share, and then he kind of put the rest in his pocket. So Matthew was not terribly popular with his fellow citizens. But, you know, if you got enough money, you can buy real friends, right? Jesus came along and said, "Follow me." And Matthew left his home. He left all of his money, and he followed Jesus. He followed Jesus. Now, that's not part of today's gospel, actually. It came from last week's, but I thought it would be a good introduction to something, because all of the disciples followed Jesus for a long time in today's gospel. They followed Jesus, and he was healing and leading worship in the various churches around the area. And then he came across, and I picture it in my own mind, as a vast field with thousands and thousands of people sitting out there. And he says to his disciples, "The harvest is great, but the workers are few." And I'm sure he was thinking to himself, how can I do this? All these people. I'm going to need to get some help. This is a turning point in Jesus' ministry. It's a turning point because disciples that were with him and had been with him for a long time, he is going to commission to go out and do his work. The harvest is great, but the workers are few. Therefore, ask the Lord of the harvest to send workers out into his harvest and into his field. Jesus commissioned his disciples to go out and begin the harvest. Now, this is an important and fundamental change in what it's like to be a disciple, because up to this point in time, disciples were simply followers of Jesus. They watched. They thought it was pretty cool when he was curing diseases and bringing people back from the dead. But now he's telling them, I want you to do this. You are going to be going out and doing what I have done. Because, for you see, discipleship is not just following. Being a disciple is not a spectator sport. Being a disciple is emulating Jesus Christ, doing what he does, acting like he acts, doing the things that he does, and bringing God's grace to everyone. That is what a disciple is. So what does discipleship look like today? Well, despite being in her 90s, Carol still works as an RN at St. Mary's on an as-needed basis. She also volunteers regularly at the Becker County Food Pantry, And last but not least, she bakes cookies for first responders at Christmas time. Carol has been called, and she is assisting with the harvest. Tim has spent countless hours on the water with elderly veterans in the Let's Go Fishing program, providing recreational activity that most had not had in years. Tim has been called, and he is assisting with the harvest. Larry spends time providing fellowship with elderly men at Oak Crossing Nursing Center. He provides socialization opportunities that they otherwise might not have. Larry has been called and is assisting with the harvest. Rod and Sue are regular volunteers at Becker County Food Pantry, providing much-needed services to the underprivileged in our community. Rod and Sue have been called, and they are assisting with the harvest. The lay leaders and staff and volunteers that we have and volunteers that will come to Sonny's boot camp have been called, and they're helping with the harvest. So what does being called to help with the harvest feel like today? Well, you might find this hard to believe, but I've had some personal experience with this lately. 3 years ago, or up to about 2.5 years ago, I was about 14 years into retirement, and I think most people would find it to be a pretty swell retirement. I mean, I wintered in Florida and summered in Detroit Lakes, and all I did was fish and hunt and carve my wood carvings and attend my large garden. About 1.5 years ago, I started having this feeling, this restlessness. Something is missing. What is it? I couldn't understand. Suddenly, I wasn't even really able to fully enjoy the things that I've been doing because something was bothering me. And it wasn't the kind of thing that you forget your wallet at home when you go to the store. It was something far different than that. Barry, you've got something to do. And after a lot of thought, I began to have some discussions with Pastor Joe. And that led me to having discussions with Bishop Bill. Because I felt that God was calling me somehow, and I really didn't know what it was all about, but I knew that I had to do something. Barry, I want you to do something. You have something to do. You have unfinished business. You're not done. You're not retired. You have work to do. And when I left for Florida last fall, excuse me, I was thinking, well, I've got all winter to think about this, and, it'll probably be a passing fad, and, I'll come back in the summer and resume my fishing and wood carving and tell Joe that it was a swell idea, but, it didn't take. But as I spent the winter in Florida, I became more and more focused. What started as this vague concept out here began to hone in. I had heard about the SAM program before leaving, but I didn't know a lot about it. But when I began to research it over the course of the winter, I knew that God was calling me to be a SAM. He was calling me to be a synod-authorized minister, and I thought that he was calling me to do that in the small rural churches around Detroit Lakes who lack pastors. Having been on the call committee only a year and a half ago, I can tell you that pastors are in short supply. And all of these small churches in the area have major needs that are unfulfilled. So I thought, well, perhaps I can do something to help them out by becoming a SAM. And so I did. I went through the steps necessary to become a SAM. I enrolled at Luther Seminary. And I'm making a commitment. I can't go to Florida anymore because I'm going to have responsibilities here. I'm selling my house in Florida. I was called to do God's work here. And then, just about the time that I was being considered for 5 or 6 opportunities in the area, we discovered that perhaps I was going to be needed closer to home. And so here I am. Closer to home, I'm at home. And I'm so thankful that the Spirit moved me and that the timing was such that it had to be divine timing. But enough about me, let's talk about you. Are you being called to assist with the harvest? Some of you already are. Some of you are volunteering. Some of you are doing other things that we don't know about at all, outside of the church, inside of the church. But first of all, you have to be a follower of Jesus. Now, I assume by your presence that you are. But the next thing you have to do is open your heart and mind to receiving a call. Are you willing to receive a call to do something? Are you willing to do more than just follow Jesus and come and worship him? Are you willing to take action and be like him? Are you prepared to emulate Jesus Christ in your daily lives? And it might not mean that you have to volunteer or become a SAM or work at the church full-time or anything else. It might just be in the way that you relate to others. You can share Jesus' love every day, and it doesn't cost a cent, and it doesn't take but a minute. The next time you go to Walmart or Central Market or Ace or wherever, and you go to that cash register and you look that person in the eye and you say, I really appreciate you. Thank you for what you do. I've tried this and it really works well. What steps do you need to take to go from today to being a true disciple? Reflect on that, if you will, and pray on it as I did. You will find it incredibly rewarding to do that. Jesus said, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Amen. The hymn of the day.